My favorite book starts, perhaps unsurprisingly, in a mental institution. Written in the form of a memoir, this is a book that speaks the truth and tells it like it is.
If you really want to hear about it, the first thing you'll probably want to know is where I was born, and what my lousy childhood was like, and how my parents were occupied and all before they had me, and all that David Copperfield kind of crap. But I don't feel like going into it if you want to know the truth. I'm not going to tell you my whole goddamn autobiography or anything. I'll just tell you about this madman stuff that happened to me around last Christmas, just before I got pretty run down and had to come out here and take it easy.
The Catcher in the Rye by J.D. Salinger tells a story of 48 hours in the life of a fictional 16-year-old. His name was Holden, and he was my hero.
Dr. Harrison and Dr. Comfort to B ward. Violent patient needs restraining. Dr. Harrison and Dr. Comfort to B ward.
I'm not going to tell you about my goddamn autobiography either. But I'll tell you why I really loved the book. See, when I was young, people thought I was just a little bit nuts. But Holden was even weirder and more rebellious than I was. But without him, I swear to you, I would have gone mad in suburban America. Would you like to follow me?
It was here at Evanston High that I first read my favorite book.
So, this first quarter, we will be studying J.D. Salinger's novel, The Catcher in the Rye.
The reaction to the book reveals a great deal about the America I grew up in.
Yes, ma'am.
Catcher has the dubious distinction of being one of the most frequently taught novels in public high schools and the most frequently censored book across America. That's my country.
So what do you think it's all about?
And Ruby. Rebellion. And that's why I loved it. This book was a mental call to arms for those of us who are sick to death of hearing our parents telling us to conform.
I never lived up to what my parents wanted me to be. Normal, for one thing. They wanted me to be this all-American girl who'd end up a happy, valiant-brained wife who'd wait all day for hubby with a martini in one hand and a batch of cookies for the kids in the other. I would have rather been in a straitjacket. From the very beginning of the novel, Holden has this distinct voice. His memoir was like nothing that I'd ever read before. It spoke in its own language, a language that most of us think, but never say out loud.
You want to go to a boys' school sometime? Try it sometime. It's full of phonies. And all you do is study so that you can learn enough to be smart enough to be able to buy a goddamn Cadillac someday. And you have to keep making believe you give a damn if the football team loses. And all you do is talk about girls and liquor and sex all day. And everybody sticks together in these dirty little goddamn cliques.
Phoniness is what really gets to Holden. It appears throughout the book, and it represents all that's wrong to him in the world. But it's wrong in everybody's world, isn't it?
See, the thing is, I never fit in with the team, and neither did Holden. He hated those macho jock footballers, and I never really made it with the cheerleaders. I mean, I really wanted to be one, but, you know, I could never succumb to a cliche. This kind of pert, zippy smile. You're looking at wall-to-wall teeth. Everybody looked like they were having a nice day. You know, I never did, and I never will.
After one incident too many with the jocks at school, Holden decides to run away.
Sleep tight, you morons!
I knew exactly what he meant. But can I say something? Those preppies he hated so much in the 50s are the same people as conservatives are now. I mean, nothing has changed. I thought we got rid of those macho guys like George Bush during the 60s, but he seems to have risen again. America, to me, has gone back to its unthinking, incurious, bullying mentality it was when I was young.
And I am whatever you say I am. If I wasn't, then why would I say I am? In the paper, the news, every day I am. I'm good just the way I am.
Holden takes a train to his hometown, Manhattan. But before he can face his parents, he has to begin his final rite of passage. He spends the last days of his childhood searching for the Holy Grail, which is truth in a phony world.
For Holden, it was Manhattan. For me, it was downtown Chicago. I used to sneak out of my parents' house to go visit my hippie friends who lived in these really sordid, rat-infested dope dens. Just to plunge into the heart of darkness and get out of the burbs. Give myself a little hit of reality.
Holden reminds me so much of myself at his age. And when he arrives in New York, he decides to get his own hit of reality at a bar he knows called Ernie's. As soon as he arrives, he declares that the bar is heaving with phonies, and he thinks the owner takes the first prize.
Ernie's a terrific snob, and he won't hardly even talk to you unless you're a big shot or celebrity or something. But he can really play the piano. He's so good, he's almost corny, in fact. Don't exactly know what I mean by that, but I mean it. I certainly like to hear him play, but sometimes you feel like turning his goddamn piano over.
Holden shows absolutely no respect for figures like Ernie, who's revered in his small little world. No one escapes his scorn. Holden sees right through people's phony facades with this razor-sharp X-ray vision.
Pretension is Holden's enemy. And while we're on the topic, I'll tell you what gets me. When you walk into places like this, if you're a nobody, you're treated like dirt. But if you're like really important, the maitre d' will give you, "Oh, monsieur, please let me show you to your table." You know, with this rectum clamped shut in excitement. Like it takes a lot of skill to show you to a table.
After his depressing evening at Ernie's, Holden returns to his dingy hotel and gets talked into calling in a prostitute. He tries to get himself ready for this girl's arrival, and so to help himself along, he thinks about what he's done with other girls.
Half the time, if you really want to know the truth, when I'm horsing around with a girl, I have a hell of a lot of trouble just finding what I'm looking for God's sake, if you know what I mean. Take this girl that I just missed having sexual intercourse with. It took me about an hour to just get her goddamn brassiere off. By the time I did get it off, she was about ready to spit in my eye.
I remember being really innocent, like Holden, way back, and I really didn't have a clue. I was really scared to admit that I didn't know what went where. I mean, I would come here with guys, and I'd be dressed up in my little miniskirt. But I didn't even know you were supposed to open your legs. I mean, these guys had to use a blowtorch.
Then she stood up and pulled her dress over her head. I certainly felt peculiar when she did that. I mean, she did it so sudden and all. I know you're supposed to feel pretty sexy when somebody gets up and pulls their dress over their head, but I didn't.
Holden finds the whole thing more depressing than sexy. He sends her away with this lame excuse that he's just had an operation on his clavichord. A clavichord is actually an early type of piano. What he means is a clavicle. but she goes anyway.
I just love this side of his character, that he couldn't even get it together with a prostitute. I mean, this is the first time I ever read about somebody who was in touch with his female side. Before that, the heroes I read in books were all those big, hunky Hemingway heartbreakers. But this guy had a soul.
And it's Holden's tormented soul that's the heart of this book. What really underpins his view of the world is the death of his little brother, Allie, from leukemia.
I was only 13, and they were going to have me psychoanalyzed and all because I broke all the windows in the garage. I don't blame them. I really don't. I slept in the garage the night he died, and I broke all the goddamn windows with my fist. Just for the hell of it.
Life for Holden stopped the day Allie died. And as a 16-year-old, he's not equipped to deal with grief. He has no reference, no guidance.
Holden always thinks Allie was the better son, and that he actually should have survived. He's always describing Allie as being clever and nicer than he is. I mean, Holden is completely unconscious how much heart he has and how deep and perceptive he is. I think he's just a misunderstood genius.
At the end of Holden's first night in Manhattan, he's left emotionally bruised and painfully lonely. His own childhood innocence is seeping away. And after the fiasco with the prostitute, his thoughts turn to the only person left he trusts, his little sister Phoebe. For Holden, Phoebe acts almost like a talisman against the fake adult world. The following morning, Holden's depression is deepening. He's at a loss as how to spend his day, and so he tramps the streets aimlessly.
I kept thinking about old Phoebe going to that museum on Saturdays, the way I used to. I thought how she'd see the same stuff I used to see, and how she'd be different every time she saw it. It didn't exactly depress me to think about it, but it didn't make me feel gay as hell either. Certain things, they should stay the way they are. You ought to be able to stick them in one of those big glass cases and just leave them alone.
Holden wants to stop time. He really wants to preserve his perfect sister Phoebe and keep her forever young. Allie's death has made him very scared of change, both in himself and in others. It's like he wants an ideal world that he can control. Don't you sometimes wish we could be preserved in time and stay children?
You know, I wish I was still that little kid who used to put her ponies to bed every night under a tissue. Or I'd make my turtle get in a bridal dress and I'd make it do wedding vows. Do you, Alvin, take you, Lolita? I wish I was still a little kid instead of this lousy phony I am today.
Holden's day becomes more and more hideous as he resorts to getting drunk alone in a bar. And nothing is more depressing than that. And then stumbling out into the freezing night. He starts imagining what would happen if he died of pneumonia.
when you're dead, they really fix you up. I hope to hell when I do die, somebody has sense enough to just dump me in the river or something. Anything except sticking me in a goddamn cemetery. People coming and putting a bunch of flowers on your stomach on Sunday and all that crap. Who wants flowers when you're dead? Nobody.
I know exactly what he means.
A little while after my grandmother died, I went to see her gravestone, and I noticed there were 3 plots nearby. So I asked somebody who worked at the cemetery, what are those for? And he said, oh, that's for your family. See, it's your mother, your father, and you in the middle. Well, that throws you. I mean, there's nothing more haunting than thinking about your own funeral. Though why it should bother me, I don't know. I mean, when you're dead, you're dead. Though even dead, I really don't want to be near my parents.
Holden eventually leaves the park, sober, but more depressed than ever. In desperation, he decides to return to the family home and visit his only real friend, his sister Phoebe. Phoebe knows that Holden is screwed up once again and interrogates him about what has happened. She accuses him of hating the world and finally asks him to name just one thing he actually likes.
I like Allie. And I like doing what I'm doing right now. Sitting here with you and talking and thinking about stuff and...
Allie's dead. Yes.
This is the most moving moment in the book. It's taken Phoebe, Holden's baby sister, to point out that Holden is living in the past. Phoebe makes Holden address the future, but the only role he wants to take on is one of fantasy.
I keep picturing all these little kids playing some game in this big field of Ryandall. Thousands of little kids, and nobody's around. Nobody big, I mean, except me. And I'm standing on the edge of some crazy cliff. What I have to do, I have to catch everybody if they start to go over the cliff. I mean, if they're running and they don't look where they're going, I have to come out from somewhere and catch them. That's all I do all day. I'd just be the catcher in the Ryandall. I know it's crazy. That's the only thing I'd really like to be. I know it's crazy.
For all his cynicism, at the heart of it, Holden is really an idealist who's trying to save the world.
There's something happening here. What it is ain't exactly clear.
I used to care about saving the world, and I went on all those marches, and I shouted about justice and freedom, and then, I don't know, somewhere along the way, the person who I was back then just got eroded away, and I turned into the person I was rebelling against. You know, back then we were fighting people who were greedy and selfish and tyrannical, all the same people that Holden hated. And now we're back there again.
Stop, children, what's that sound? Everybody look what's going down.
He leaves the safety of his home and Phoebe to go and sleep in the streets. He's really losing control.
Then all of a sudden, something very spooky started happening. Every time I came to the end of a block, stepped off the goddamn curb, I had this feeling that I'd never get to the other side of the street. I thought I'd just go down, 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 and nobody's ever gonna see me again.
I mean, this is exactly what depression is about. And that's why Salinger's a genius, because he so simply describes this indescribable black hole. I mean, it's that feeling when your head is about to burst because it's so full of these kind of conflicting thoughts from hell that you don't know whether to turn right or left or go forward, because why bother going anywhere at all? I mean, that hopelessness is exactly the dark side of depression, which I once felt. But now I'm on a medication, so I don't feel it anymore. But I did.
It's at times like these that we all wish we could run away. No responsibilities, no hassles, and it's the same with Holden. He dreams of a better future.
I figured I could get a job at a filling station somewhere. I'd pretend I was one of those deaf mutes, and I'd build me a little cabin somewhere with the dough I made and live there for the rest of my life. I'd meet this beautiful girl that was also a deaf mute, and we'd get married. She'd come and live in my cabin with me, and if she wanted to say anything to me, she'd have to write it on a goddamn piece of paper.
In the book, Holden talks about just getting out of the rat race, you know, because there's too much noise, and he just wants peace and quiet and no more phonies. Well, I mean, this was the original vision of the hippie dream. And that was their vision of euphoria, and my whole generation was obsessed with it. I just wish that in the book, he always talks about finding this log cabin. You know, if he was real, I swear to you, I would have married him. We would have lived happily ever after. I mean, this book was written 50 years ago, and now people are still talking about that the world is dumbing down, and they just want to downsize. This is the new word. You talk about a visionary.
In fact, running away to live in the woods is exactly what the author J.D. Salinger did when he moved to Cornish, New Hampshire, and became the world's most famous recluse. He's apparently been writing ever since he disappeared, but refuses to release any of the material into the world. This rare footage is our only glimpse of the great man. Other than that, we know nothing of consequence. Ironically, Holden, unlike his creator, never goes through with his dreams. When he sees Phoebe wants to run away with him, he realizes that he's being selfish and irresponsible. The child in him wants to run away, but the adult he's become realizes that his actions have repercussions. To cheer Phoebe up, Holden decides to take her to a fairground. His journey is about to end.
Then the carousel started, and I watched her go around and around. All the kids kept trying to grab for the gold ring, and so was old Phoebe. And I was sort of afraid she'd fall off the goddamn horse. But I didn't say anything or do anything. The thing with kids is, if they want to grab for the gold ring, you have to let them do it and not say anything. If they fall off, they fall off. But it's bad if you say anything to them.
What Holden understood is that you can't be the catcher in the rye. You cannot preserve people in cotton wool. And it's with this realization that Holden has at last grown up. He finally understands that he wasn't to blame for Allie's death, and he won't be to blame if Phoebe falls off the carousel. Once again, Holden showed me the way.
After the riot, I got arrested for disturbing the peace because I was a baby militant. Anyway, my parents threatened to cut me off and throw me out, so I knew the party was over. I knew it was time to grow up and join the ranks of the enemy.
All right, Wax, you're out of here.
So I did the most mature thing I could think of. I sold pot and ran away to England.
Holden has reached the end of his journey as he watches Phoebe on the carousel. The mental and emotional strain of the trip to Manhattan finally takes its toll, and the book ends as it began, with Holden in a mental asylum.
That's all I'm going to tell about. A lot of people, especially this one psychoanalyst guy they have here, keeps asking me if I'm going to apply myself when I go back to school next September. It's such a stupid question, in my opinion. I mean, how do you know what you're going to do till you do it? The answer is you don't. I think I am, but how do I know? I swear it's a stupid question.
But this is not an unhappy ending. Holden's been through a traumatic rite of passage, but he has survived. He's finally laid the ghost of his brother Allie to rest and learned the most important lesson of life. Be true to yourself.
Holden is my hero, and he saved me from a life my parents always dreamt of for me. That I'd be a suburban housewife with a suburban husband and matching kids. You know those people who wonder at the end of their life, did I miss something? Well, because of Holden, I didn't miss anything. And I get to be rebellious, even at this age. Pick up this book and save yourself. It's never too late.
Well, Holden Caulfield would be in his late 60s by now. Would he have